Jeez. Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Lamandola. I'm the Commercial Sales Director for Fuse Universal here in Denver, Colorado. And I'm incredibly excited to introduce my former colleague, good friend, Dr. Matt Hayes. And I'm going to ask him to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Hayes. My background and all my degrees are in how people learn and remember and how you can design software to get them to do those things better. I run research and analytics for Amplifier, a brain science-based online learning platform in Boulder, Colorado. And I'm actually remote from Los Angeles. So in a way, I've been preparing for this pandemic for a while. I really lucked out actually, because my role and even my day-to-day activities haven't changed that much as a result.
I mean, and I'm in the same situation. I've worked remotely for years, but most of us aren't so lucky. You know, a lot of us have seen a big change in the work that we need to do. Organizations, as a result of the pandemic, obviously, a lot of them have downsized. People are finding themselves in new roles with very different responsibilities. And when that happens, it's very common to feel unprepared. You have skills, but maybe it's not completely in sync with what you need to do in this new position or a new type of role. And a lot of times it makes us feel like we're not good enough.
Well, and if we're being honest, you're probably not great at a new thing. I mean, not compared to someone who's been doing it for years.
Right. And that's not real fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, being good at something is great, right? Talent wants to be used. Expertise wants to be consulted.
Yeah. Exactly.
But getting good at that thing is a different story, I think.
It is. And I think that's where the conversations I've had with you recently have really taken an interesting turn. So why don't you kind of share your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, getting good can be less fun, it can be less fun, right? Yeah. You look at Michael Phelps or somebody at the end of a race, he's a lot happier than he is at the end of a practice. No one's yelling, woo, at the end of swim practice. Maybe and putting in that work is even harder if you're not the one single person like he is, who's already the best at all time at the thing he's doing, right? He's in the practice pool thinking, I'm Michael Phelps. And I'm in the practice pool thinking 30 more laps until I can go eat tacos. So being already good is easy. Getting good is hard.
But is that the difficulty in getting good necessarily a bad thing?
That's the $1 million question, right? It feels bad. Having that difficulty feels bad, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is bad.
Yeah.
But we get tripped up because of two things: our intuition and our culture. And those are what we need to address in the current climate more than ever: intuition and culture.
Let's start with intuition. I think that's a great
question. All right. Well, basically, your intuition's all wrong. Well, not yours, Kristen. Your intuition's great.
Thank you.
People's intuition about learning, whether it's their own learning or their trainees' learning, is usually way off. And that's because a lot of the really powerful drivers of learning are counterintuitive. Yeah. And as you know, there's this whole category of what Bob Bjork at UCLA refers to as desirable difficulties.
Oh, yeah. I remember learning about this when you and I worked together at Amplifier. And I was fascinated with the concept. Of course, I love a good alliteration, but the concept itself, because it's counterintuitive, really grabbed my attention. Why don't you go a little bit deeper into what desirable difficulties is? Because it's definitely an oxymoron.
Right. It doesn't sound desirable.
No.
Desirable difficulties are things that you do on purpose to make learning or training harder, but where the result is better retention and performance in the long term. Learning that feels easy probably isn't doing a lot for you. So if I tell you my middle name is Jensen, and then I immediately ask you what my middle name is.
Jensen.
Very good. But that quiz was a waste of your time. But if I waited a while, so some forgetting has crept in, and then I asked you, so you really have to work to pull that information out of your brain. It's harder. It can feel worse, but the act of reaching in and getting that information out that's excellent for your memory. It feels easier to get asked right away, but it's worse for you.
Okay. And it's that challenge during learning that helps the learning stick and helps us to improve performance-wise.
Exactly. Another great and probably the most counterintuitive example is interleaving. So if you've got two similar business processes to learn about, it's painfully obvious that you should work on one and then work on the other so you don't get confused. But it's actually better for your long-term retention and ability to apply to tackle them both at once. When you interleave them, your brain has to be responsible for making the higher order structures that resolve that confusion and help it tell the two apart later, which is exactly what you need to be able to do to on the job after training's done.
That's right. When you're in,
but when you're right, but when you're sitting down in training or to work on some self-guided exercise, it feels like it cannot possibly be the case that mixing is better than keeping them separate. So people choose to do it the way that feels easier, but that is actually worse. You know, nobody reaches for the bitter medicine of productive learning.
Oh my God, I love that phrase, the bitter medicine of productive learning. We need to get that.
I think I came up with that myself, actually. I'm going to take credit for it until somebody contradicts me in the comments. But this feeling, your intuition about your learning is so wrong, but it's so powerful that even experiencing the opposite of what you expected doesn't change your expectations for the future. So Nate Cornell, who's at Williams College, has found that you can put people through a task where some topics are blocked and some topics are mixed. They do better on the mixed ones, but when you explain the experiment afterward and you ask which they did better on, they say blocked. It's so counterintuitive that it overrides your own experience of your own learning. And it's insane. Asher Koryat at the University of Haifa has actually found that you need to be taught explicitly that how you're doing during training doesn't predict how well that training is going to last and how well you'll be able to apply it.
All right, so I want to clarify something though. I don't think what you're saying is that anything that's bad will result in good training.
No, it's not the case that anything bad during training is good. You could have challenges during learning that are bad. If you hit me in the head with a frying pan the entire time I was trying to learn a new analysis technique, that would be a bad challenge.
All right, I'll keep that in mind as my daughter studies AP physics remotely. No frying pan in the head.
Right, yeah. For everyone that's watching, I think if there's one takeaway from this session, it's don't beat your kids over the head while they're trying to learn.
Please don't. Please don't.
Takeaway.
Seriously, I mean, we are in a situation globally where folks are in a place where they have to get good quickly. We're also in a place where the opportunities for kind of traditional learning and development, traditional professional development are more difficult to find. And it may be this way for quite some time as L&D kind of gets their heads wrapped around how they can support people in this incredibly unique period of history. And it's incredibly stressful for everyone, for the learner, for L&D.
And that stress is actually really bad. That stress is bad for your learning. It's bad for your health.
Yeah.
It's bad for your organization, everything. And that's where the culture part comes in.
Yeah.
So if you embrace the idea that learning is going to be challenging and that this challenge is a good thing, that well-constructed difficulty is a good thing, then it has to be okay for a trainee to not be perfect as they go through training. It's got to be okay for them to hit obstacles.
And this is where L&D can come in. You know, we talk a lot with our L&D partners about culture and setting up a culture. I don't know if we've talked enough about setting up a culture where failure, and I'm going to put my little air quotes in there because that's still such a negative word, but where failure is okay, where it's okay to try, where it's okay to stumble. Right?
That's absolutely right. And the fact that you have to put air quotes on failure reflects how pervasive this is, even for people who, at least in theory, know better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're familiar with desirable difficulties, but it's still hard to embrace that, like, something that's harder can actually be better.
Yeah.
And so as a result, learning and improving have to be done in a a friendly, kind, understanding space where everybody involved recognizes that it's only easy if you're already good at it, right? If you need training, you must not already be good at it. And so you're going to get some bumps and bruises along the way. Not being perfect needs to be okay. And so the feedback that you get, whether it comes from an in-person trainer or a virtual trainer or a computer adaptive platform like Amplifier, that feedback needs to be constructive and helpful and take into account that learning something new is hard. Being asked to do something you're not already good at is hard. And those things are okay.
So what I hear you saying is that maybe you're saying all the smart stuff. I'm just agreeing.
I think that's quite fair.
It's kind of what we've always done. Our suggestion to L&D is that ahead of time, really think about the inherent difficulty that there is in learning something new and to have a safe place for that. And I think about when you and I worked together, we had a lot of clients in the contact center space. And I think contact centers do something really, really smart, which is they are onboard agents. And then they have, before these agents go live, before they get into production, they have this place called nesting. And I don't know if it's actually a physical place, it's more of a period of time in which they have the opportunity to practice, and they can record themselves taking calls. They can get feedback from people who are subject matter experts, and they know, to your point, they know it's a place where they can be without fear of ramification. You're not going to mess up in nesting and get fired unless you really mess up in a pretty egregious way. But I think that can happen.
With a frying pan, maybe.
There we go. I think we need to have a frying pan next time we do this. But if that can become part of the culture, not just in the contact center space, but elsewhere, I think that's a great suggestion for L&D.
That we all need a nesting place. I really like that, actually. I mean, you're not going to change society, right? Failure in the world is going to be perceived as bad, and I think that's reasonable. You don't want your a healthcare provider to say, "Well, sorry about that," and there not be any consequences. But if L&D can make just one small space that's a supportive environment where there are no punishments for mistakes made during learning, and where learners get well-formed feedback and guidance, that's going to allow learners to really thrive. It will also let you add desirable difficulties to learning without the learners themselves freaking out over feeling like they're not doing well and interpreting that poor performance as evidence that they're not benefiting or improving from the training. So if you get, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because, and it gets back to desirable difficulties, doing something that's too easy can be boring.
Right. If you have a supportive environment where you get to overcome challenges, it makes you learn better. It makes you more engaged, because a good difficulty can be really engrossing. I mean, doing something like you just said, doing something really easy is boring. The easiest game in the world is to push a button that says you win, right? Just press this button to win. No, you don't have that app on your phone, right? Nobody's playing this game. Or take golf. There's a quote about golf saying that it is getting a small ball into an even smaller hole with completely ill-suited tools. And yet many people find that fun.
I'm one of those people, and yes, I'm crazy, but yes. But we're starting to talk about games, and it seems like gamification is something that might be part of this conversation.
Gamification. Gamification is what you do when you don't overcome your intuition or your trainee's intuition, and you don't change your culture around performance during training. So learning a new thing feels hard, and that difficulty is mistakenly interpreted as bad. So it feels bad, and you want to do some palliative thing, some Band-Aid that makes it feel better. So you add points or badges or blinking lights or cash register sounds.
Right.
And in the very short term, it works.
However, what's it mean for long-term learning? It does gamification, in your scientific experience, does gamification really drive learning in the long term?
in the long term, it's not even neutral. It's actually bad. Artificial external rewards can actually make your trainees worse off.
Worse off.
Yeah, there's a couple of great studies. There's a really good study from the early 70s where the researchers had college students play with Soma, which is this sort of wooden 3D cube puzzle toy. It's like a combination of Tetris and Jenga.
Interesting.
Yeah, especially in the early 70s when the Rubik's Cube hadn't come out yet. People were spending money on pet rocks. This thing was amazing, right? So participants come in and are asked to interact with this toy. They create different configurations with pieces of the puzzle to match what the experimenter shows. Half the participants get paid halfway through the experience and half don't.
Okay.
And then toward the end of the experiment, the participants have a little free time where they can either keep playing with the puzzle or they can read some magazines that are also on the table. And the folks who got paid put the puzzle down earlier and switched to magazines more. That external reward took away their internal motivation to keep playing. And the folks who didn't get paid kept hacking away at the puzzle.
Yeah, so the external reward was a disincentive to continue the learning.
Absolutely right.
That's insane.
It actually gets worse. So there's another study with preschool kids, and it's heartbreaking. These preschoolers had what they perceived to be a very neat and totally radical set of markers in their classroom, and the researchers asked them to draw a picture. But some kids get told that they would get a prize for drawing the picture, and others just got to draw a man with these totally awesome markers, man. This is a 70s preschool, obviously. So anyway, you've got some kids who get to draw with the promise of a reward for drawing, or some that just got to draw, and then time was up.
Okay.
And the kids who weren't promised a prize drew twice as much afterward, double. So this external reward robbed these kids of their pre-existing motivation. At least the puzzle thing was college students, right? But this reward, this prize, made 4-year-olds want to play with markers less. It took away their desire to draw.
This is so sad and incredibly telling. I don't think this is something that a lot of folks realize about gamification.
Well, I mean, it's sad. It's tragic, and it's entirely unnecessary, right? External reward systems like gamification are trying to do something that, look, if you're a learner and you know that productive learning involves challenges, and you're in a culture where it's okay to encounter and go through and overcome difficulty, you don't need gamification. It's the same way you don't need golf to be easier than it is, right? If there's
yes, I do.
but if there's no ramifications for failure during learning, there's no fear and stress, and then the challenge itself can be the reward, which is why you keep going out and playing golf. And when the challenge is aligned with what's good for your learning, you have the perfect environment to improve.
Say that again. Say that again.
When the challenges that you face, when the obstacles that are in your way, when overcoming those obstacles is a productive thing, that is what's going to get you to improve. That is the essence of desirable difficulties. That is that, instead of telling you my middle name, I make you wait and then experience the difficulty of pulling it out of your brain. But that act is the thing that will make you better in the long term.
Matthew Jensen Hayes.
Nice, you did it. You'll never forget.
Hey, I think we are kind of close to the end of our time.
Oh, wow.
It seems like a really good place to put a fork in it, but this was fun, Matt.
Oh my, this is, to be honest, more fun than I expected. I really love talking to you, but this is actually great. I hope we get to do it again sometime. Thank you for the invitation.
I would love it. It's great to see you. Keep doing great work, and thanks for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Be well.
All right. Bye.